Okay, so today I'm going to review over what we talked about as far as muscle organization goes. And when we look collectively at the entire muscle, collectively at our entire muscle, such as, for example, the bicep, okay, we notice that there are several levels of organization, that our muscle is actually composed of many different fibers and many different units. Okay, so if we were to cut this muscle in half and look to see what was inside, we'd first see that everything inside is actually encased by a layer of connective tissue type layer of something called the epimysium. And in this epimysium, you'll find these bundles, and you have many other different types of bundles, which would also have their own fibers. And each one of these bundles we will call a fascicle. Fascicle. And this fascicle is also going to have its own membrane, and this membrane of connective tissue, we're going to call that the perimysium. And further inside that perimysium enclosed fascicle, we will find some more units, but this time the unit that we are getting to is the actual muscle cell. Okay. So here we go, we have our muscle cell. And it's also actually called a muscle fiber. And encasing the muscle fiber, we will have what is called the endomysium. Okay, so the endomysium will encase all of these muscle fibers. And so these are three different levels of organization, all the way down to the muscle fiber, which is the actual muscle cell. Now, if we wanted to take the muscle fiber itself and look at that even a little bit further, here we have a muscle cell, and the muscle cell on the edges will have these ridges, and the purpose of these ridges is because they're actually going to be holding the nuclei of the cell. Okay, so remember that skeletal muscles are multinucleated. This is tubule in nature. So we'll put the nuclei over here. And this area, this inside area in the cell, typically in a normal cell we would call it the cytoplasm, but for this case in the muscle cell we'll actually call it the sarcoplasm. The outer membrane, what we would normally call the plasma membrane for our muscle cells, in this case we will call it the sarcoplasm, or sarcolemma, excuse me. So we would call this the sarcolemma. The muscle fiber itself is also going to have its own individual units, and these units will be combinations of proteins. And this unit, if we took it out, when we looked at it, we would see striations. And so this is what gives skeletal muscle the striated appearance. And this unit, we would actually call it a myofibril. Compared to a muscle fiber, the muscle fiber will be contained of myofibrils. Now, this striation pattern is going to come from the combination of many different units of something called the sarcomeres. And I'll go ahead and introduce what a sarcomere is here, but we'll probably spend a little bit of a different slide talking about exactly how they work. What I will do now is just kind of identify what are the structural components for this sarcomere. So a sarcomere has several different unique features. The first is going to be a zigzag line pattern, something that we will call the Z line or the Z disc. So Z line or Z disc. And there will be several of these spread apart. And the definition of one sarcomere is the length of one Z line to the next. So this will be our actual sarcomere. In between the sarcomere, we're going to have other bands as well. We'll have different areas and different locations. You're going to have different proteins and different interactions. So if we just looked at the gross collection, I'll identify what the bands are, and then we'll show you how those bands are made up. Okay. So you'll have another central appearing line, and in between you'll have a whole bunch of other interactions between two primary proteins that we're going to be interested in. And we'll get looking at these a little bit further in a second. There's a couple distinct areas. First, the area in this location, we will call this what is called the A band. So there's one A band. This would also be an A band. And the area in this location surrounding the Z lines or Z discs would be something called the I band. Okay, so what is in this I band? What are these A bands? What is this whole sarcomere thing? And that's kind of what we're going to go ahead and look at and kind of discuss real quickly. Primarily, the sarcomere is going to be made up of two types of proteins. First, what's making the Z discs are interconnections of protein called actin. Here you have actin on either side. So here's our actin. And fixed in the middle of this, in this middle area, is going to be another protein. And this protein is thick compared to actin. And it's going to have heads on it. And we call these heads myosin heads because the protein itself is something called myosin. Okay. So this is myosin, and the yellow lines are what we call actin, and this area would be our Z line. As far as the bands go, if you notice where the Z lines are, and the area that's highlighted over here, the area that only has actin, generally this area where we only see actin present, this particular area, and this would be on this side, this is what will actually make up the I band. The area where we see both actin and where we also see myosin. In this area, we see both actin and myosin present. This is what we're going to go ahead and call our A band. Okay, so if we go back here, the very outer layer that we are talking about, this very outer layer here, call it green, this very outer layer here, this is the epimysium. The next layer, the perimysium, is going to encase all the fascicles. So not just this individual fascicle, but all the fascicles are going to be held in together by the perimysium. And so let's call the perimysium blue. This perimysium, then it's going to surround and interconnect and tie in all these fascicles. In. This fascicle will be interconnected. So in this case, this blue, this is the perimysium. And just like the perimysium is holding in all the fascicles, then the endomysium is going to hold in all the muscle fibers. And so that would be the next level inside. Here it's going to be interconnected with this edge, but it's serving as a connective type of tissue to connect all these fibers together, and so this is where our endomysium is. So this endomysium, not only referring to this area, but also the whole tissue network that's interconnecting the muscle fibers. So I just wanted to clarify that and add that in.